The water is low. Of course, all I got is hip boots. Went down to Sparkleberry. This is old Sparkleberry Landing where you had to go through a gate. They kept cows down there, and you had to open up a gate and go through. And the road down into Sparkleberry was steep and it was muddy. You couldn't hardly get in there to get out. There was no paved landing, no ditches there. You pushed and pulled a boat through that ditch. Well, you couldn't even get through the ditch. So it was a cow path that paralleled to the right, the swamp. So I was by myself, so I started down that path one morning. And I walked and I had a stick and I touched the creek beside me to see if I could get across, and I couldn't. Finally I found one little place that I thought if I sucked it up I could get across. Well, I did. And I went back there and it was just bone dry except for this one little pothole. It reminded me of North Dakota. And many years later. And so I got a bunch of brush and pulled up some driftwood, made a blind, and the black ducks, they were in there and they started coming. You could shoot 4, and I shot my 4 black ducks in no time. That was also the morning that I shot the 8-point buck. I heard the dogs running. I had a slug. I was shooting a Sweet 16. I got up, and I wish I never shot that deer. And I walked about 50 yards, and the dogs came by, and the deer came by, and hesitated, and I shot. Well, it took me the rest of the day to drag that deer out of that swamp. And I wish that was the first deer I ever killed. And after that, I promised myself I'd never kill another one, which was a lie, because I killed more. But take a deer out of a swamp. It's not, you don't put them on your 4-wheelers and your ATVs or whatever and ride them out. You had to drag them. In the old days, you had to cut a pole and put them on that pole, and they'd swing back and forth. And you'd hit a muddy place and boom, you'd go down. But don't you think it was much more fun back then? Okay, I was 16 years old. I went down to Pax Landing at Remini. I myself had a little 3-horsepower Johnson motor. Every time you'd hit a stump, you'd share a pin. So you had to take about 100 pins with you. The water was low. Well, it turned cold. It started snowing, then it started sleeting, then it started doing everything else. The water started freezing. By the time I got over in the woods, we had a pretty good amount of ice. Water. The boat wouldn't go any further. So I had on hip boots, and I got out. Well, I went over my hip boots up in my waist. So there was a little island in front of me. I pulled the boat up, an old wooden boat, got out, took all of my clothes off, built a fire, got some sticks, had my clothes on the sticks, and I'm sitting over a log like this, and I heard whack, 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 and I looked up and there was a drake and a hen. I just reached over, I had a little double barrel 20 gauge. I picked it up, bam, bam, killed both of them. Put the gun down and went back to hugging the fire. And that's probably one of the funniest things that ever happened to me, with the exception of leading the fella into the hole. When the fella shot the duck over the hole and he encroached, and I led him, and he wanted to know where the duck was at, and I said, well, you just come on, keep on coming. He did, and then he went to make a step, and he disappeared. He went somewhere. And he came back out of that water like a Polaris missile of a submarine. And that's the last I saw of him. And but see that morning, a fellow by the name of Danny Hill was ahead of me. Danny went in the same hole, so I knew where it was at. And Danny disappeared. Danny may have went to another world or somewhere. And Danny said it was deep and it was dark. But that fella, he never ever came back. And there was the time I unloaded Danny's gun and called a flock of ducks in. And Danny picked up there, he was shooting a Model 12, and I said back, he went click, click, click. And he couldn't figure out what was happening. I had 2 ducks on the water. And I started laughing. He said, "You didn't?" I said, "Yes, I did." And Danny was a big old fellow anyway, but he couldn't run fast. And so we had a good life. There were so many, funny, oh my goodness, I could tell you stories about Danny, myself, and Steve Boynton all day long when it came. Like the time, and we went in early one morning to sleep and just got in the tree. I had a can of potted meat. Well, I had a buck knife. Well, instead of turning the blade away from me, I turned the blade toward me and split my tongue. And that wasn't much fun that morning. And falling in, and just so many things we did. It was just, so a lot of people wouldn't be funny unless these things you had to be there with the people you knew. Other than that, they're not really hilarious to anybody else. In fact, some people say, well, he ain't right, excuse me, he ain't right in the head. You know, stuff like that, because they don't understand hunting. Duck hunting, the camaraderie that goes with all of this. You know, the jokes, cutting shirt tails, like, I don't know if they still cut shirt tails, but like they used to do. And Bruce McClure is dead now. He used to keep a dough in the back of a trunk. You know, but who's going to charge him now? But it was one of those rare, rare days in South Carolina, very rare, where you had sleeted and snowed one day. And myself and Bill Cockrell and Tom Dahl decided we'd go in McCallum and shoot. So we did, and surprise, surprise, as Gomer Powell would say. It's the first time that any of us had ever seen pintails in that swamp. Oh, we'd seen a few, but I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds came in there. And the mallards came, and the black ducks came, and the widgeons came, and the teal, and the summer ducks, and it was just everything but the pintails. And we did quite well, I can say that. We did quite well that day. And we killed a limit. I can safely say we killed a limit. It was a shoot. I mean, it was fast, but you couldn't hear it. You couldn't hear it. Somebody shooting right next to you, you couldn't hear the gun go off. So if it had been illegal, nobody'd ever heard it. And that was a super shoot. Earl Dennison, one of the old famous duck call makers out of Newbern, Tennessee. Probably one of the first ones. And that's where duck calls originated, is around Newbern, Tennessee. They made a long duck call with volume, because they called ducks from a very long distance. Not like calling in timber where it's it can be soft. I mean, you really had to throw volume out. And I saw an advertisement, I was a kid, Field and Stream. Earl Dennison had a mallard hen sitting on his left shoulder. And the call cost $25. It was called the Stradivarus. And I had to have it. And I worked and I saved up my money and I bought it. And I blew it for a long time. In fact, the reed in it came from a moonstone still. These old copper brass reeds. It's still there. But it was blown wet. You had to take it, shake it in water and blow it. And one day I was in a swamp and it came apart. And I didn't think I'd ever find it. And I found it floating out and I put it back together and I never used it again. Okay, Sonny Kirkpatrick. Louisiana, northern Louisiana. I met Sonny down in Charleston at that expo they had, and I guess they still have it every year. And I heard this fellow calling. I made my way to him. He was a short little fella, really kind of weird looking, and he had people all around him listening. And it was like a Pied Piper. And we talked and invited me to his house. And so I went and hunted ducks with him, and he was amazing. Simply amazing man with a duck call. He could hit that call. Now, what's the one? The other one that makes duck calls. He's the world's champion, Buck Gardner. Buck Gardner will tell anybody, I can beat Sonny on the stage, but I can't beat him in the woods. I can't do it. And Sonny, he was hilarious. But he could pick a duck call up. He trained a lot of people. A lot of them became state champions and went to Stuttgart and all that. But he had a funny thing about Sonny, he had a lot of humor. Sonny had a son-in-law. And son-in-law one time we went into a little shop. Sonny had all these chemicals. And the fellow was holding a mask over his face more than how Sonny was able to work in all these chemicals. Sonny said, well, I go to Shreveport twice a year and I get my lungs vacuumed out. So the fellow decides he's going to go to Shreveport because he's been in there and get his lungs vacuumed out. So he's sitting in the hospital, sits there all day. The doctor comes by and said, well, sir, what's wrong with you? He said, well, my son-in-law said I should come over here and get my lungs vacuumed out. And the doctor called security. But that's not all his son-in-law would do. His son-in-law got the idea that he could take his family and go into Shoney's. And if they sat in a booth all day long, they could eat free except for the first meal. They finally ran him out. And it was, my son Scooter, we had duck hunted with Sonny one time, and that was a treat. Hunted off a little oxbow lake off the Red River. And oh goodness, we had ducks all over us. It was something. And Sonny died not long ago. And I wrote I think it's my second book of poetry. Yeah, Moments of Glory. I have a poem in there about Sonny Kirkpatrick, and it's sort of sad, and it's I'm trying to think of the name of that poem right now, but I can't. But it's a good poem. It's a long poem. In the end, he dies, which we all do. But it talks about him in Charleston, attracting the people, the Pied Piper, duck hunting together, and the things he thought about duck hunting. But I remember one time I went to see him. He said, well, I don't have much to show you. There's not much around here to do, but I can take you down the road and show you where they gunned down Bonnie and Clyde. He said, that's about the biggest attraction we got. That's the kind of person he was. He was just dry humor. And just, I like Sonny. I miss Sonny. Okay, once upon a time, I always like once upon a time. I was in Arkansas with my son and another character. They were very, very good friends. Well, we were in this field hunting, and this storm comes up. I mean, it is a vicious storm, the worst storm of the century. And lo and behold, my son's friend, he makes a break for it. He gets up, he starts, the lightning strikes, he thinks about it, and he hits the deck again. And this time he stays. But that's not the last of it. Somebody took a band off a teal, and I thought I had killed this banded bird, and it was a phony band. So it was kind of both ways that day. And so that was hilarious. And but probably one of the best duck shoots was my grandson. He just turned 16, had his hunter's license. I had hunted with this fellow Mark Beam out in Colorado, hunted greater Canada. And I always wanted to shoot mallards. I used to shoot all these mallards. The greater Canadas were fun and all that, but they're not mallards. And so I take my grandson out there, and Mark meets us at the airport. Of course, he thinks my grandson is about like this, but he has to almost get a ladder to look up to him because he's way up there. And so, anyway, he said, well, John, I've got a place we're going to shoot in the morning. Well, you just have to wait and see. I said, okay. Morning comes, he's still mum about it. And on the way he says, I've got the Kodak property. And he said, Kodak wouldn't let anybody hunt. It's like 50,000 acres. He said, no one has shot this property in 50 years. And so we get there. Before daylight, the ducks start. I am not exaggerating. There wasn't 500,000 ducks that morning or more. There wasn't a duck there. And they were just hitting the ground, just flock after flock after flock. There were 5 of them. The light's not too good. Mark keeps saying, don't shoot the hens, don't shoot the hens. Well, we opened fire, and guess what? When we finished, we had 22 hens and 3 drakes. But it was just, and I saw that place like that the other night on YouTube, and I kept telling Mom, I said, that's it. Because they had ducks come just like we did, just flock after flock after flock hitting that field, just and you know what I like to do since I don't duck hunt like I used to? I like to sit in my chair and watch them and get my duck calls and call right along with them and pick my shots and say, here they come, get ready. Say, oh my goodness, that's an easy shot. And punch my wife and say, don't move, here he comes, don't you move. And take my cane and go pow, pow, and watch it fold up. Okay, but what it is, it's better than nothing. I get to call with them, and it keeps your lungs in good shape, calling. And I can still call.